I think this topic's really interesting to me because networking and making relationships, as you know, is so important in sport and so important to actually play in those higher levels. But I don't know. I don't know about you, but for me, that was never taught to me, even though it's super duper crucial. So I just sort of hope that I can kind of give you a little bit of value today, or maybe think of things from a little bit of a different angle, or maybe kind of just a check for you to know that, yeah, you know what, I am doing things to help me get into the right direction. So, so quickly. So yeah, so I just wanted to shout out to Cody. So thank you so much, Cody, for hopping on this. He's been a super important person in part of my development, especially in rugby. Yeah, and he's a special person to me. So after I'm done my presentation, I'll just sort of open up the floor to him, and then he'll give us his wisdom. So yeah, just thanks, Cody, for hopping on, and everyone else. Oh, and also, if you guys have any questions throughout, you guys can just type in the chat, and then when I'm done, I'll just look at them. And then there's a little Q&A at the end, so we can kind of open the floor up and stuff like that. So yeah, so little intro. So I think for me, what's really important is I want to be able to provide real life examples and not just theory. I think there's a very big difference between knowing and doing. And I'm really unsatisfied with the quote that knowledge is power. I actually think applied knowledge is power. And I kind of look at knowledge as sort of like potential. Knowledge is potential to me, because potential means nothing unless you do something with it. Otherwise, it's sort of wasted talent, if that makes sense. Like, we all know the super smart kid or the person that's super capable, but they don't do anything with that capability and that gift and that potential. And so I do really think there's a difference between knowledge and doing. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of share my real life examples and hope that resonates with you and you can pull something from that, and yeah, walk you kind of step by step with how I got recruited. So before we start, like, I just sort of want to establish that I'm not a guru and I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not here to point my finger at you and come from that sort of position, because I'm also learning as I go, just like you. I just might be maybe a couple steps in a different maybe a couple steps ahead of you, or maybe in a different phase than you, maybe seeing life and where I am from a different perspective, and hopefully can share some value with you. And I've been doing a lot of reflecting. I'm an overthinker, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are too. You know, I'm constantly dealing with people who have more experience than me. So I'm always having to sort of update myself and adjust, and learning how to communicate my intentions with people from different parts of the world, whether it's players or coaches or people who are high up in organizations, cross culturally. I find that quite tricky. And the really cool thing is, when I actually went to Japan to play rugby for the first time, that's when I actually learned that we could all be speaking English, but because our experiences and stages in life are different from mine and yours, misunderstanding can be super duper high. And so the point I kind of want to establish before I get into the presentation is that I also make mistakes too. And my goal is kind of just to share with you value from a genuine place. So why should you even listen to me? Who am I to you, and why does it even matter? So I think the base of everything is I'm probably just like you. You know, I'm that kid with a dream trying to figure out, how the heck am I going to make it real? Like, I have this thing in my head. How do I get it out of my head and make it real? Like, how do I live it? You know, how do I get that thing into the real world? And just like you, I'm learning as I go. And just a little bit of background for myself. Like, I didn't have a father growing up. You know, I come from a single mother situation. I didn't have any connections to sport. So it's not like I'm coming from a rugby family or like a football family, or I didn't have any connections, you know. There was nothing established. So I literally started from zero, just like a lot of other people. Also, I was very poor at school when I was younger, and I think that's really important to me, kind of underlooked or overlooked by other people who feel the same. Because when you're little, school's your little society, and it's the one thing you're supposed to be good at. And, things that I was good at, those things were never recognized by teachers. So I wasn't really coming from a place of confidence. And kind of the example that I like to use is in grade one. So that must have been, I was about 6, 7 years old. My teacher actually sat in front of the class and asked the class, what do you guys want me to put on your report card? What do you want your parents to read? And I thought that was a really interesting question. And actually, still looking back, I don't quite understand what her intentions were. But everyone was taking turns, right? Everyone was saying their thing. Daniel said one thing, this other girl said another thing, and then it was my turn, and I said, "Oh, I want you to write down that Raina's really funny." And mind you, I was 6, I was 7 at the time, but she shot me down right away. Like, she was like, "What do you like? That's inappropriate. That doesn't make sense." Da, 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 da. But I think what I was trying to say at the time, as a 6, 7 year old, was that I really enjoyed making other people laugh. Like, I wanted to bring joy into the room, and I had this way of, I think I'm good at bringing people together, and I love entertaining and stuff like that. And I just wasn't able to articulate that. But anything that I was good at was never enough and wasn't the right thing to be good at, if that makes sense. So I was kind of one of those kids. So I understand what that feels like, to be an underdog. I also have experiences of not being the underdog, of being at the top as well. But yeah, it's just sort of the relatability. But I did have two things. Okay. I understood that the impossible things are actually very possible, because for whatever reason, life is mysterious and it seems to reward courage. I don't know why. We can argue why all day, but it does seem to reward courage. I don't know, I just see it all around me. People who take the step forward, people who do the thing that's really scary, even though they feel scared, they seem to get rewarded at some point. And then the second thing is understanding the power of relationships. Relationships are so, so important. And I understood that watching my mom. And quick note about my mother. So she moved from Japan. She's an immigrant. So she moved from Japan to Canada when she was, I think, about 19. And she dropped out of high school, and she didn't attend high school, and she doesn't really have a middle school education either. But she's sharp and she's smart. And just watching her, because she was a young mom, so watching her develop and survive and become very, very successful at what she does in a foreign country without knowing any English, I just understood the power of relationships just by watching her interactions. I kind of have two main recruiting stories for my life. So I kind of like to break it into two phases, two phases of my life. So the first one is how I became the first female to play university men's football in Canada. And that was about a 10-year journey. It took a lot of time. And then after I finished football, I switched to rugby. And that recruiting journey of how I got recruited to play pro rugby in Japan with basically zero qualifications. I have no experience in rugby, and I don't know the language. And that was about 3 years ago now. So just a quick football summary, because I think that's really important, because it's sort of the base of who I am, and a lot of my success comes from football. So just to give you an idea, I got recruited my senior year of high school with a torn ACL. So I had no senior film. And you need, just like rugby or any sport, you need to compose like a highlight film to showcase your talent, showcase who you are and what you can provide to a team. And in American football, your senior year is actually the most important year for recruits, because that's when all the recruiters come and start offering scholarships. And in football, if you want to play professionally, if you want to go to the CFL, NFL, you have to go through the university pathway. You can make it without going to university, but the most secure way is going through university and college. So basically, my senior year, I had no way of actually displaying my talent, which was very anxiety inducing, because I had put in 10 years of all this hard work, and then I tear my ACL and I can't even showcase myself at camps. What the heck do I do? How do I get found? How do I get recruited? But the one thing, on top of that, I'm trying to play with men and I'm a girl. So I kind of had all those things going against me. But the one thing that did save me was I stuck to my rules, my principles, and my values. So I went to every single showcase camp that I could. And how football works is they'll run this huge camp over a weekend or a day, and all these recruiters will come. And it's basically, you're basically just selling yourself. You're showing, this is what I can do. You ball out for a camp for a weekend. And people, like recruiters, coaches, they just pick you, basically. So I went to every single showcase camp that I possibly could, from maybe 12, no, I think 13, all the way until I actually reached uni. And at those camps, I had one principle, which was I would shake every single coach's hand after the camp. Even if they didn't coach me, even though they weren't my positional coach, I needed them to feel my handshake, have that human connection, see my face, who I am, and make my goals and my intentions very clear. My goal is to play university football. Looking back, I'm very, very proud that I did that, because it opened up my life to a whole bunch of opportunities. And the difference is, a lot of the guys, they would only say thank you to the coaches that coached them, but I made sure that every single coach saw my face and I said thank you to every single coach. And that's exactly how I met my university head coach, was at this camp. So this camp was held about a month before I tore my knee, and I didn't even know he was watching me, even though, yeah, I didn't even know it. He was watching me, because we didn't exchange any words or anything throughout the entire camp, and this camp was about 2 days. So Coach Dobie, that's his name, he loves to talk. So the camp is done. Everyone's basically like packing up, going home. And I'm sitting there, I'm waiting, because he's talking to some guys. And maybe about 45 minutes or an hour had passed. I'm like, okay, finally I can talk to coach. He's the last coach. I'm not thinking I'm going to get anything out of it, by the way, because we didn't talk. But the first thing he said was, I wanted to talk to you. And I was so relieved. I'm like, oh, thank God that I shook his hand, because that he was watching me, even though I didn't know. You know, you don't know who's watching, and you don't know who you're going to resonate with. So don't be too quick to judge. So that interaction led me to getting recruited into university men's tackle football, and that's how I sort of made that 10-year dream come true. And now fast forward to rugby. So I'm in university trying to do this football thing, and okay, it's COVID. COVID hits, boom. Everybody's forced to go back home, because I'm living in Canada at this point of time. That's where I grew up. So everyone's forced to go back home, and I have to think about the next steps of my life. I don't know if I can ever play football again. Nobody knows if university sport is going to happen. So I'm like, okay, let's transition now while I can. Let's just start now, because I don't know how long this thing is going to take. So I'm sitting there in COVID, just like everybody else, and thinking, how am I supposed to make this dream real with no contacts in the rugby world? And I've never played, right? I have no backing. I also have zero understanding of the rugby landscape. Like, I don't understand how you get recruited. I don't understand what leagues are out there. I don't understand the opportunity for women. I didn't know how to get to the top. Where in football, I did. I knew what to look for. But in rugby, this is a different system. So where the heck do I even start? And then I thought to myself, okay, well, if I were a professional, where could you find me? LinkedIn. So if you don't know, LinkedIn is it's kind of like it's a social media platform for professionals. And I love LinkedIn because you can message people and talk to people and find people very easily on LinkedIn, which you can't do on Instagram or Facebook, because it's just a different, people on LinkedIn are there to connect, right? So what I did was, I'm like, okay, I can find these people on LinkedIn. So I don't know who, but I know I can find them on LinkedIn. So I made a profile and I added all the information to my profile that I could that would be appealing to a coach. Okay. All the playing experience, all the teams that I played for, all the awards that I've won, anything that was higher honors or all-stars, my grade point average for school, especially my Instagram. I'd always linked my Instagram because I use my Instagram as a resume for coaches. Videos, articles, anything to show that I have potential, right? And before I messaged these coaches, I kind of had to think, okay, I'm coming from a little bit of a unique situation. So what is my selling point? Like, what exactly am I offering? Because I have zero experience, right? So why would a coach want to have me on their team, right? So how I kind of framed it was, I'm displaying myself as this long-term project, because that's what I am. My goal is, I made it very clear, I'm zero now, but my goal long term is I want to play for the Japan national team. And so I'm not in it for a quick contract. I'm not in it for this, and that. Short term, I'm in it for the long term. And I'm committed to this, and this is my history. So I really had to figure out, yeah, what would exactly be appealing for a coach, and find out what the selling point is. Is it my leadership? Is it kicking? Is it raw talent? And then you have to pair it with the willingness to learn and show that willingness to learn. So yeah, so that was sort of my mindset starting from zero. So who to message, right? Because I'm like, okay, I have my angle, I have my story, I know what I want to display. Okay, now who the heck am I gonna message? Because I don't know anybody, right? And rugby was tough because I'm searching with a Canadian search engine, right? But I'm trying to figure out the Japanese market. Anytime I would search anything that was like Japanese women's rugby or leagues or teams, like just trying to get some sort of information, the only thing that would pop up was the Sakura 15, so the Japan national team stuff. And I'm like, I'm not at that level. Like, what the heck? Like, how am I supposed to connect with that? Like, that's not giving me anything. I need to join some sort of club. And even at that time, I didn't know what club teams were. There's no club concept in football. What do you mean club? What do you mean professionals play club? They didn't make sense in my head. It only took me, I actually only understood that maybe last year, a year and a half ago, to be honest. I couldn't wrap my mind around it, right? I didn't know what pro teams existed. I didn't know the pathway. So, because normally in football, what I would do was I search up a team on Google. I'd go to that website's roster, find the management or coach, and normally there's some sort of email that you could email, right? But this time there's nothing. There's no structure, no teams, no nothing I could search. So I was literally like, damn, bro, like, what the heck? Like, it was very hard. But then I thought, okay, wait a minute. So LinkedIn is kind of unique because it lets you search by profession. So I might not know head coach of Harlequins, but like I might not know their name or anything about them. But what I could do is I can get really specific. So, okay, I knew my target was rugby, and I knew my target was Japan because I'm Japanese. I should have said that earlier, but those were my two main targets. Like, I started searching Rugby Japan, and then a bunch of people would just boom, just drop in, was listed. I'm like, okay, that's so cool. Okay, here's all these people that I never knew about before, and now I know because they put their profile there. And then I started to really have fun with it. I would search strength and conditioning Japan, Italy and France, France, strength and conditioning. Like, I literally even went like tennis, ping pong, lacrosse, Hong Kong, anything. I would just search, and I literally added thousands of people. Like, I'm not kidding. I think in 2 days, I remember looking the amount of people I requested and they accepted. I connected with almost 1,000 people in 2 days because I was literally doing this day and night. Because I knew that somebody had to know somebody, right? Somebody who works in tennis might know somebody who knew somebody who would work in rugby, because that's how this works. So, like, I literally, not only did I send friend like connection requests, but I also sent hundreds of messages. Like, I went heavy on the volume because I was just like, I needed to put myself in a position where people knew about me. And eventually I knew that I'd meet somebody who would value what I had to offer. Finally, I literally spent 2 days, like I said, morning and night, adding people, messaging. My eyes were really hurting, but I finally got lucky, and a friend of mine, now general manager for my club team in Japan, he messaged me and put me in contact with my club team in Japan that I'm with now. And that's exactly how I got my first professional contract. And I think the key with this was I used my social media as my resume. So even though I didn't come from rugby, I came from football, I used my entire social media as, I would post videos just so coaches could see who I am and get a feel of my skill. You know, you can tell by a video like how somebody moves. You know, you can tell certain things just by looking at 15-second videos. And I did that. My target audience wasn't my peers. My target audience was people who were going to make my dreams come true. And I think, you know, a lot of people, they use social media for personal reasons, but you can, I always tell young athletes, why don't you make a separate account and use your social media and make like a rugby social media, a football social media, a soccer social media, just so you have something when coaches ask for proof, you have the proof. You know, I work hard. This is what I'm good at. Da, 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 da. So let the social media do the talking for you. So yeah, so how, I said a lot, right? And how can you apply my story to yours? So I'm going to break it down into 5 topics. So one, like I said, volume. Like reaching out to 5 people literally isn't enough. It's not enough. I message hundreds of people, even when I was trying to get recruited for football, and I made that connection with my coach at that camp. It took me about 8 months, a year of contact, like ongoing contacting with my coach, with Coach Dobie, to get him to say yes. So I didn't even know if I was going to get that yes. You know, for is it okay for me to join your team? I didn't even know if I was going to get that yes. So in between that 8-month, 1-year period, I was still messaging coaches. I probably messaged every single D2, D3 university, college in the States, in the US. I messaged every single university in Canada. Volume is very powerful. You do not underestimate how many seeds you need to plant for a tree to grow. It takes a lot. And also, just a key note with these messages, like I personalize these messages. I'm not saying I spent like 30 minutes on each messages, because that's crazy. But genuine effort goes into these messages, because I know you can feel when somebody is copy and pasting a message, you know, like on Christmas, are you just saying Merry Christmas? It's kind of, oh, where's the heart in that? You know, like you got to make it a little bit personal when you do it. And also, I've been left on red so many times. So it's natural to feel discouraged, and you don't know what's going to stick. You don't know who you're going to resonate with, right? So it really is about volume. Like, do not underestimate the amount that is required. And you might get it on your first message. You might get it on your 50th message. You don't know, right? You don't know what's going to stick. So don't be discouraged. It's volume. 2, communication is a skill. I think especially because we're young, this is so, so important. Learn to find your voice. So learn to talk to all sorts of people, okay? Like learn to find out people's boundaries, like things that they care about, things that they like, things that they don't like. And this is going to change across different cultures, different people with different experiences, different age groups, people in different professions. It's all different, but learning to talk to all sorts of people. For example, I respect waiters and waitresses a lot. Like if you can learn how to communicate to serve other people, like not for your own needs, really figuring out about the other person, it's really a game changer. You know, because it can be really intimidating trying to talk with somebody who you perceive as higher status than you. Whether that's a coach, whether that's a boss, maybe that's an all-star player on your team, you feel that intimidation. But when you kind of learn that your shyness doesn't actually matter, because talking and communicating is actually a skill that you can develop, you know, building relationships, that's a lot easier. And you can do that by learning to talk to other people. Just talk. It doesn't matter. Like the random person at the grocery store, it doesn't matter. The cashier, make them smile. Learn how to make them smile. You know, ask them how their day is, as cliche as it is. Learn how to talk. You need to get your reps in even off the field, right? And the point of all of this is becoming relatable. Okay? So how do you use your experiences in your life to connect with others? Relatability is so powerful. It's very, very powerful. And get good at reading people, man. Analyze people. Ask why. Like when you're watching people, like, why is that guy so good with girls? Like, what is he doing? Like, why does that teacher like this student? You know, the person of authority. Why does this person of authority really like this one? You know, what is this student doing to build that relationship? Like, how did she make this person laugh? What techniques, how did you get that laugh out of that person? Like, how did this person get this person to say yes? You know, why do people, this person, why do people listen to this guy? You know, really get good at reading human behavior and turn it into a technique that you can use, right? So using your own human behavior and watching how other people do it and just adding to your toolbox. You know, like, I think it's very powerful, for example, knowing when to smile. I know smiling is natural and stuff like that, but if you see really charismatic people, they know when to smile, which is very interesting. Even if it's natural, you know, when to touch someone's shoulder, like those human interactions, when to, when not to. I think learning what it means to be a human is really powerful because we're animals, and actually our behaviors and our way of thinking is quite predictable in a lot of cases, sometimes unpredictable, of course. But if you understand what it means to be human, I think actually interacting with other humans becomes a lot easier. You're kind of pulling away from the intimidation fact because you know how to deal with another human, right? Like, we build up these stories in our head, but at the end of the day, the guy that I'm trying to, the coach that I'm trying to talk to, you're just another human. Of course, you have accolades and experience, etc., but you're a human and you feel what I feel, you know? And 3, understanding the power of relationships. So I'm very fortunate. There's a lot of sponsors with my club, and I'm always picking their brain. I'm always asking these people questions, and I've asked a lot of millionaires, like, what's the one most important thing to be successful? Like, what is it? Because they know my goals, and they all say relationships. And that really, you know, at first that was a really unsatisfying answer. I'm like, what? Like, all right, cool. But the more I hang out with these people, the more I grow and develop, and the more I reflect on how I grew up and the way my mother interacts with people, they're so right. Like, relationships are everything. And the more the more you start to understand yourself, and the more you start to understand human behavior, the more you really feel that you can't do this alone. You take 1 piece of paper, you can tear it. 2 pieces of paper, easy. 3, boom, easy. 4, maybe a little tough. But you take 100 pieces of paper and you try to rip an entire book, that's very, very tough, right? So your dynamic with people is very, very important. Yeah, number 4. So building trust and credibility. So who are you as a person? Does your reputation match your character, and vice versa? You know, are you somebody that I can trust with confidential information? Are you going to betray me straight up? Are you going to betray me? You know, trust is very, very hard to earn, and it's very easy to lose. And as I've gotten older, I'm really starting to realize how critical trust is in a relationship, as cliche as it sounds. For example, if I'm a coach, does my coach trust me that I'm going to get the job done? You know, does he trust me that I'm going to get the job done, that I'm going to be honest, that I'm not like a sneaky person, or I have some hidden agenda or whatever? Is he going to trust that I'm accountable? You know, and trust and credibility, like, these things, it's not flashy, but it takes constant work. Like, that's about you as a person, right? You know, the point, I guess the thing for me is, like, trust is the glue. So what's the point of making a connection if you can't keep it? You know? Okay, great, I made this connection, that's really cool, but oh man, I lost it because they didn't trust me, right? And number 5 is really cool. Number 5 is something that is very personal to me, and I think is very, very important, is you actually want to network and build horizontally, not vertically. I think when we think of networking, we kind of think of it as like climbing the ladder, but actually you can build a really strong circle with what you have already. Not always, but I think it's something to definitely consider, especially for the young ones. Learn to bring greatness out of people around you, right? So I kind of think of it like everybody has healthy and unhealthy qualities. I kind of think of it as a spectrum. On the right, I don't know, maybe you're trustworthy, maybe you're confident, maybe you're this, that. But on the left, you're self-critical, you get angry. You know what I mean? We all have those qualities, and sometimes we lean a little bit more on the right, sometimes we lean a little bit more on the left. Totally depends on the circumstances and where you're standing and stuff like that. But if you're the person that brings the best version out of people, that's very, very, very powerful. Like, do the people around me, I always ask myself, like, do the people around me, do my friends, do my family, do they respect and like who they are when they're around me? I kind of think of it as like with the relationships and the people closest with me, how can I cultivate that? Because in 10 years, you have no clue where they're going to end up. They might be your business partner. They might be the person that actually recruits you. You have no clue people's talents and people's potentials and where people are going to end up. So don't underestimate the power of recognizing people and their gifts. And the one example that I like to really use is one of my buddies. I think he's really struggling with confidence, even though he's a stand-up human being. But he really showed me loyalty. I don't think I have a friend who can show me loyalty the way he does. And so every time, like, growing up, and when I realized that, I'd always tell him, I'm like, you're loyal, you're this, you're that. And then I always remind him and recognize that, because maybe somebody else doesn't. And now it sticks with him, right? And now every time he has a chance to be loyal, he shows it. And I think that's very powerful. And I have another friend, she's such a good listener. When I was in uni, I think I had trouble knowing how to listen. But listening is a very important part of relationships. But she would remember something that I would have said maybe a year ago. And I'm like, what the heck? How do you remember that? But I know she's listening. And so she actually taught me how to listen. And I make sure that she knows that she taught me that. Yeah, so just really pulling the greatness out of the people that are already around you, I think that's very, very powerful. And you can make a very powerful team. And that might take 3, 5, 10 years. But the circle that's around you is so important. It can either pull your leg or elevate you. So I think if you can do that with the people that you love the most already, I think that's very respectful and really quite an amazing skill. Oh yeah, so dealing with fear. So we all know that we have to do it, right? We know we have to network, we know we have to reach out, we know we have to do this and that and this, but then we're kind of scared, right? It's like we know what to do, but the doing is actually quite difficult. And for me, what works is I kind of ask myself, is fear a good enough reason to not do something? And sometimes it is. Sometimes it is a good enough reason. But when I think big picture, I don't think fear is a good enough reason. When I look back, I'm like, oh, I didn't do this amazing thing because I was scared? What? I don't know, but that's just how I work, right? Number 2, remember that every human has felt what you felt. And so a lot of times that the person actually, especially if they're mature and are in the right headspace, they actually quite understand where you're coming from. Whenever I reach out to people, whenever I reach out to a coach, I just try to remind myself, like, hey, they also understand what it's like to be a rugby player trying to look for an opportunity. They understand what it's like to be that young, hungry kid. And so a lot of the times they're going to be a lot more understanding and kind than you think, even though maybe they might communicate a little bit more straightforward, or the way they communicate is different from yours. But you don't have to really be intimidated, because a lot of people understand. Of course, some people, they don't care or they're not in the headspace, but there are people who understand what you feel more than you may realize. And this really kind of leads on to the third point, is to humanize who you're talking to. I think if you see yourself in others, communicating, relationships, networking becomes a lot easier. And that's where the relatability also comes in. Like, really, yeah, the real key thing for me, like, to get over that fear, is I do really see myself in others. I try my best to. It's sometimes it's a bit of a stretch, But if you can see yourself in the other person, no matter what their status is or no matter where they come from, um, it makes interaction a lot easier on your end. And I kind of also like to think of it as making a tackle. You have this big body coming at you and it's really scary and intimidating, and you feel their energy coming at you and you're like, oh no, they want to run me over. You know, those big girls, they just want to run you over. But for that one split second, I just don't think, and I go for it. And by the time you stand up, you're like, oh, I made that tackle. You know, it's over. So yeah, that's sort of my mentality around dealing with the actual fear. Yeah, and so overall, I know I said a lot, but I think overall, if you're gonna take one thing away from what I said today, is that basically network is one human and another human interacting with each other. That's it. It's one human and another human. 1+1. That's it. So there's no need to be overwhelmed or sort of get in your head too much. Although that is a real thing. I do understand the fear. And we looked at sort of 5 concepts or 5 topics from slightly different angles, and they all have a key role. And it may be hard to apply everything, but I just sort of wanted to show you guys that there's different angles to view this from, and there's different angles from where you can apply yourself, and you may be able to apply yourself in some areas more than others, right? But there's a lot more to the how, and there's so many ways how to do something. And I hope that, you know, because I don't really think, it wasn't taught to me how to network, it wasn't taught to me how to build relationships in school and stuff like that. So I hope that there was some value that I was able to provide today. So before we hop into the Q&A, I'm just going to pass the floor on to Cody. If there's anything, you'd like to add from your perspective.
Hey, yeah, so I'm just driving, so I won't have my camera on.
Yeah, it's all good.
That was amazing what you spoke about. Just in terms of like our connection, like I had Emily Chancellor, a mentorship group for players that want to go professional. And as I said, I had Emily on, and after that, Raina and I connected, and just kind of hearing her story, like it was just totally kind of blew my mind, because it's not kind of, especially in the Southern Hemisphere in Australia and New Zealand, it's not normal to reach out to coaches, which now in the last like year or two of like reflecting, like it's stupid. Like we just think things are going to happen, and yes, for people they do happen, because there are outliers who have amazing talent, but for most of us, and especially me, it comes down to, like what Raina spoke about, is relationships. I look back on my career and I'm just like, you know, I'd go to trials and I feel like I do my best, but then I just wouldn't have those conversations, because I was like, oh, I don't want my friends to think I'm trying to suck up or anything like that. But now I look back, it's like, who cares what they think? Because, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. So I think the key message for me is like, put yourself out there. You don't want to look back like I am now, and I'm 33, and I was just like, I really didn't maximize my opportunities. I guess that'd be my big takeaway from this.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cody. I appreciate that. And I think our relationship and our connection it's cool because it's just so natural. We just hit each other up on socials, and we happen to be in Australia at the same time. It's been really fruitful, and you've been such a huge part of my development. I really can't understate that. Without Cody, I don't know. I really don't know where I'd be. Like I wouldn't have the confidence to be in New Zealand right now and challenge in New Zealand, and keep challenging myself and have the confidence. And I find it really interesting because in Canada and in North America, you're really pushed and taught to make the connections. Like, you got to go earn it, you got to go sell yourself because you're a product. And so I find it really interesting and a little bit frustrating, actually, at times when I talk to my friends in Australia. The opportunity's right there, but they don't know how to capitalize it or how to optimize that opportunity. So yeah, who really cares what people think? Because when you reach a certain level, you'll be able to bring other people up. There's nothing wrong with stating your intentions. So yeah, I really appreciate you sharing, Cody. Yeah, it's insightful and it's important. I'll open the floor up Does anybody have any questions? If you do, or comments or anything, can you please? You don't have to show your face, but turn your mic on, and then you can just ask away.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you said you in your senior year you're recovering from your ACL injury, how do you deal with the mental side of things?
The mental side of the injury, eh?
Yeah, the mental side, and then coming back, like bouncing back and getting back onto the field.
That's a really good question, because I actually tore my ACL 3 times. So I know what it's like to go through that process 3 times. I even have a teammate who's done it 4 times, and I think each time was different. So to be honest, the first ACL, I wasn't so much worried about, am I going to play the same? Am I going to get back? I was more so worried about, how the heck am I supposed to display my talent and prove to coaches I am what I say I am? And how am I supposed to get recruited in my senior year? Like, I think that was that was a struggle point for me at that time, because, oh my goodness, is 10 years a waste of my time? But I think what really helped me was I was in the gym all the time. Like, I made sure I had a routine. I was going crazy with the upper body. I was just in the gym, and I just surrounded myself with greatness as much as I could. Whether that was older players, whether that was other people at the gym, et cetera, et cetera. I made sure I was around that good energy. The community part, for me, my mentality is more so, you don't have another choice. What's your other choice? If you have a goal and you have a dream and you invested your life into something, you really have a decision. It's like, I either do this or I don't. And it doesn't matter how I feel. I have to get things done. So I think my mentality sort of leans more so that way, if that makes sense. So I kind of neglected how I felt, like the sadness and stuff like that. And I literally just put all my energy into the work, if that makes sense. It may not be a satisfying answer, but that's sort of how I went through that. And I just went really, really hard on the volume of connecting with coaches. Yeah, if that makes sense. I think that's it. But yeah, thank you guys so much for hopping on the call today. I really appreciate it. And if anyone has any questions or anything like that, you can always DM me on WhatsApp, or even if you wanted to book a call with me, hop on a 20-minute call with me, just shoot me a DM, and then we can go from there. So yeah, thank you guys so much for your time. It was a lot of fun, and I hope you guys received some value from it. Bye guys.